Welcome to our channel. You might not have heard the name Shaisu before, but their story is something everyone should know. What if I told you that there was a people, predating the formation of Israel, who worshiped the Almighty God even before Abraham? Yes, the Shaisu were an ancient and enigmatic Semitic people who revered the same God who would later be known as the God of Israel. In this video, we're going to unravel the mysteries behind this nearly forgotten civilization that could completely change our understanding of the origins of the worship of Yahweh. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single detail of this astonishing revelation. At first glance, the idea of a people who worship the Almighty God before Israel might seem strange, almost unsettling. After all, we're used to associating the worship of the God of Abraham directly with the history of Israel. But the truth is, the Bible itself offers us clues about the existence of Semitic groups who, even before Israel's formation, revered the Almighty God. Many of these groups, in fact, had a direct connection to Abraham. In this context, there is a biblical figure who plays a crucial role, though he is often overlooked: Jethro, also known as Rule. He was a priest of the Most High God, and his importance in the Old Testament, especially in relation to the story of Moses, is immense. Despite his quiet presence in the scriptures, Jethro's influence is fundamental, particularly in the Pentateuch, and more specifically in the book of Exodus. Jethro's story is essential to understanding a key aspect of biblical history. When Moses fled from Egypt, he went directly to the land of Midian, where he encountered Jethro, a priest devoted to the God of Abraham, but who belonged to the Canaanite Midianite peoples. This connection to other Semitic peoples reveals a larger picture. The worship of Yahweh existed among many groups beyond Israel. Moses stayed with Jethro for 40 years, learning from him and deepening his knowledge of both the traditions of Abraham's people and those of other Semitic tribes. This period in Midian was critical for Moses' spiritual and cultural development, allowing him to understand the broader context of Semitic worship traditions. He married Zipporah, one of Jethro's daughters, further connecting him to the Semitic lineage and their reverence for the Almighty God. Moses' life in Midian, far from being a simple exile, was a transformative time where he absorbed profound knowledge of the Semitic people's worship practices, which would later become foundational in the formation of Israel's religious identity. Jethro is just one biblical example proving that groups beyond Israel revered the same God as Abraham. In the same vein, the mysterious Shaisu were among the Semitic peoples who, like the Canaanites and the Midianites, served the God of Abraham even before the formation of Israel as a nation. The Shaisu, also known in ancient Egyptian texts as Sasu, were a nomadic people who inhabited the southern Levant during the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age, or roughly during Egypt's third intermediate period. These nomadic clans, governed by tribal chiefs, were pastoralists who lived in tents, moving across a vast region that extended from the Jezreel Valley to Ashkelon, and even across the Transjordan, the Sinai, and into parts of modern-day Saudi Arabia. The Egyptians often viewed the Shaisu with disdain, branding them as bandits. The Hyksos, another Semitic people who had ruled over Egypt for a time, had left a lasting negative impression, and as a result, the Egyptians associated the Shaisu with disorder and lawlessness. Etymologically, the name Shaisu is believed to come from the Egyptian word saz, meaning those who move on foot. Other scholars, however, suggest connections with the words meaning to wander or to plunder, which may have reflected the Egyptians' perception of the Shaisu as thieves and outlaws. Despite this negative portrayal, the Shaisu were much more than mere nomads or raiders. They played a significant role in the political and cultural landscape of the ancient Near East, and their influence extended far beyond what the Egyptians depicted. The first known mention of the Shaisu appears in a biographical inscription from the 16th century BCE, discovered in El Kab. This inscription details the military exploits of Admiral Ahmose, who took Shaisu prisoners while serving under Pharaoh Thutmose II. These prisoners were captured during a punitive expedition in the northern regions, hinting at the Shaisu's far-reaching presence. Scholar Jivian, 1971, argues that the emergence of the Shaisu around this time might be linked to the expulsion of the Hyksos from Egypt around 1550 BCE. Further evidence of the Shaisu's importance comes from the 39th year of Pharaoh Thutmose I's reign, his 14th military campaign, when the Shaisu were encountered near Rishenu. This shows that the Shaisu were present in the southern Canaan and Negev regions, as recorded in Thutmose I's enemy lists. Their significance in the ancient world is further underscored by the fact that the name Shaisu also appears on the bases of columns in the Temple of Soleb, built by Pharaoh Amenhotep I. One intriguing detail found in this temple is the reference to a location called Srr in the land of the Shaisu Chu-Su-Sur, which many scholars believe may refer to the region of Seir, home to the Edomites. This potential connection between the Shaisu and the land of Seir suggests that the Shaisu may have had cultural or historical ties to other groups like the Edomites. In the 13th century BCE, columns commissioned by Pharaoh Seti I and later by Ramses I in Nubia mention 6 distinct groups of Shaisu, including those from Srr, Rbn, Smt, Rbih, and Pysps. These inscriptions not only highlight the Shaisu's wide geographic range, but also suggest a complex network of clans or subgroups spread across the ancient Near East. Perhaps the most fascinating detail in these inscriptions is the reference to Yu, which many scholars believe to be an early reference to Yahweh, the God of Israel. This raises compelling questions about the Shaisu's religious practices and whether they might have been among the earliest worshippers of Yahweh. If true, this connection would profoundly alter our understanding of the development of monotheism in the ancient Near East and the role that the Shaisu played in the early history of Yahweh worship. The Shaisu continued to hold sway over the mountainous regions of Canaan, the West Bank, and Transjordan. Their growing influence was so great that they severely disrupted Egypt's northern trade routes for a considerable period. Ramses I and his son Merneptah led extensive punitive campaigns against the Shaisu in an effort to reassert control over these vital regions. However, after Egypt's withdrawal from Canaan, the Shaisu, along with other groups like the Apiru, consolidated their power and influence. The Canaanite city-states, left vulnerable by the Egyptian departure, were at the mercy of the Shaisu and other nomadic groups. Documents from Egypt's 18th dynasty confirm the Shaisu's growing prominence. Records from Pharaoh Amenhotep I, for example, show that nearly half of the prisoners taken from the region of Kor or Karu were Shaisu, reflecting their significant presence in the area. Later texts would continue to refer to the Shaisu as one of Egypt's greatest enemies, alongside the powers of Babylon and Libya. The influence of the Shaisu extended far beyond their reputation as bandits. They were a formidable force in the Near East, shaping the political and military dynamics of the region. The origins of the Shaisu, as recorded in ancient texts, suggest a deep connection to the region of Dothan, which was mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. This is the same region where the story of Joseph took place, with nomadic traders bringing their flocks to water at a spring near Dothan. The possible overlap between the biblical narrative and the historical presence of the Shaisu raises fascinating questions about the relationship between these Semitic groups and their influence on the religious and cultural traditions of the region. The relief depicting the campaign describes the Shaisu as a rebellious and chaotic people, whose tribal leaders gathered in the hills of Kor Karu to plan revolts. They are portrayed as contemptuous of their neighbors and disregarding the laws of the Egyptian palace. During this campaign, Seti I also confronted the Abiru in the vicinity of Megiddo, highlighting the persistent instability and conflict in the region. This period of turmoil and Shaisu dominance marks a fascinating and complex chapter in the history of the ancient Near East, where power dynamics, culture, and religion were in constant flux. Now, when we come to the Shaisu of Yu, we find a fascinating and surprising detail. The name of the biblical god, Yahweh, is directly associated with this particular group of Shaisu, who were already worshiping the Almighty God even before the formation of the people of Israel. It is important to remember that in addition to Jethro, there were other Semites who served God long before the story of Moses. A notable example is Job, from the book of Job, who according to most sources was an Edomite, a descendant of Abraham, and also a worshiper of God. But returning to the Shaisu of Yi, two Egyptian texts, one from the period of Amenhotep II, 14th century BC, and another from the time of Ramesses II, 13th century BC, mention the land of the Shaisu of Yi. According to researcher Michael Astor, this hieroglyphic translation corresponds strikingly to the Hebrew tetragrammaton Yuhu or Yahweh, and predates the earliest known occurrence of this divine name in the Misha stele by more than 500 years. K. Van der Toren concludes that, as early as the 14th century BCE, long before the worship of Yahweh reached Israel, groups of Edomites, Midianites, and Kenites already worshipped Yahweh as their God. This fact opens a new perspective on the origins and spread of Yahweh worship, suggesting that it was already present in religious traditions prior to the formation of Israel, and that the Shaisu of Yi played a crucial role in this still largely unknown history. It is very important to highlight that all of this only reinforces what the biblical texts themselves state categorically. Midianite and Edomite groups were already serving the God of Israel long before the official formation of the people of Israel. This is fascinating, especially when we remember that Job described as an Edomite and Jethro, a Midianite. Both believed in and served the Almighty God. It is clear that both Edomites and Midianites also practiced paganism and polytheism, but the worship of the God of Abraham was preserved within these nations. Jethro, for example, was an influential priest in Midian, which suggests that he taught many others to follow the Almighty God. This leads us to believe that there were a considerable number of worshippers of Yahweh among the Midianites. Furthermore, some experts believe that the Israelites may have shared a common origin with the Shaisu, considering that their brother Gideonites and Midianites were included in this nomenclature redesignation for certain Semitic groups. It is worth noting that, from the Egyptian perspective, Semites in general were known as Hyksos or Hyksos in ancient Egyptian. In summary, the Shaisu were an ancient Semitic people whose worship of Yahweh predates the formation of Israel, challenging our understanding of the origins of monotheism. Their deep connections to figures like Jethro and their significant role in the ancient Near East reveal that Yahweh worship existed among various Semitic groups long before Israel's establishment. This discovery opens up new perspectives on how the worship of the God of Israel began and spread. If you found this video insightful, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on more fascinating revelations like this one. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.